biggest story that continues to make headlines since yesterday is the standoff with island nation Maldives after those ministers made some very uncouth remarks against Indian Prime Minister as well as Indians per se.
Yep.
Some were calling them racist. The rage is now building up, with many industrialists now calling for a boycott. Just yesterday, EaseMyTrip cancelled all flights to Maldives. As of this morning, industry bodies in India are also asking for a discontinuation of the existing trade ties with Maldives.
So what we know for sure, Shweta, right now is that the Indian government per se and the civil aviation minister has not yet come forward and asked for flights to be cancelled.
That is
now,
correct.
there are these travel and tour operators who, out of their own goodwill or out of their own love for the country, are taking this step, and EaseMyTrip being the first to start that trend to cancel flight bookings on their platforms to the island nation of Maldives. Now, I think what Maldives has to very clearly understand from all that has happened over the last 2 days or so is that India is too large a neighbor to be messed around with.
Absolutely.
And there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that we are not the India of the 1990s, 1980s and before that. India is the 5th largest economy right now. The contribution of Indians traveling to Maldives and Maldives' own economy, which pretty much exists only on tourism, is about 25%. So 1 out of every 4 rupees worth or $4 worth of revenue that Maldives earns is actually on the back of Indians traveling. So you would be, as a minister, very irresponsible and perhaps as citizens of Maldives very foolish to go ahead and make those remarks on social media. Now, that, of course, is history. That is one part of the story that we have dealt with in great detail.
But since then, the stories emerged, right? So, you've had the parliament in Maldives suspending those ministers, and also some of the ex-parliamentarians and former prime minister also coming on record to suggest that India is important partner and the leadership in Maldives must apologize. That apology hasn't come through just as yet.
So, former prime ministers, former state heads, former ministers is all okay. What about the current dispensation, which is causing up to China at present? So, you may want to, be in bed with China, and you may want to, further your ties, your strategic ties with China. But where is the apology? I think Indian Prime Minister, Indian citizens deserve that apology coming in from the current dispensation at Maldives. And that is yet to come through. Now, what is also happening in the midst of all this is that some Indians are actually now attacking MakeMyTrip, which is a competitor to EaseMyTrip, asking for MakeMyTrip to also cancel flight bookings to Maldives. Now, I think, it's great to be, to be patriotic, but I think we need to balance patriotism with jingoism at some level. Businesses still need to run. In the absence of government clearly saying that that we want to cut off travel to Maldives, I don't think citizens should go up in arms against platforms which are doing legitimate businesses right now. And there are people who may have planned their travels. There are people who, who may be looking at planning travel that they have not yet booked seats, booked tickets for. So I don't think we should encourage perhaps, calls for banning MakeMyTrip, for example, which is not yet cancelled flights.
Absolutely. So as I see, there are two sides to this story. One is, of course, a group of industrialists, traders, startups are now calling for boycott of Maldives, and they have taken action. And they've also advised, some of their members to perhaps cease and desist when it comes to trading with Maldives. That's number one. And a lot of people support that move in a sense, understanding that Indians contribute substantially to tourism and trading with Maldives. And if we were to directly call off that tourism and trading, it will substantially impact Maldives. Perhaps an apology will come sooner rather than later. And then the other side of the debate, of course, is that you cannot hurt legitimate business, as you pointed out. MakeMyTrip is not in wrong if it wants to continue dealing with Maldives packages and Maldives tourism and trading and travel destination. In your understanding, where do you actually draw, where's the middle path? Where do you actually draw a semblance between the two stories? Because we essentially would not endorse a racist behavior from a country which we contribute substantially to by the way of tourism. At the same time, businesses cannot take a beating.
So as I see it, Shweta, in my humble opinion, it's a diplomatic problem. It is not really a business problem yet. If the diplomacy does not work, and if the Maldives government is not conscious enough of the mistakes that have been made by sitting members in its parliament, calling names to Prime Minister Modi and racist comments against Indians traveling, And if diplomacy is unable to extract an apology out of Maldives, perhaps the Indian government should flex its muscles and should teach Maldives the lesson the hard way by going ahead and restricting travel of Indians to Maldives. There are going to be a few pockets, there are going to be a few individuals, a few families and friends who will suffer on account of their trips to Maldives not going through. In fact, Maldives was on my bucket list as well, but Maldives is no longer on my bucket list, and it will not come back on my bucket list until an apology comes from the Maldives government. So, if the diplomacy does not work in favor of India extracting an apology, at least to begin with, from the Maldives government, then perhaps flexing of muscles is required. And that is when not just the platforms that enable, flight bookings, but even flights flying to Malé and back should sort of, terminate their operations into that country. So until then, I think we'll have to let diplomacy play its true course. And beyond that, if it becomes a business scenario where we take this voluntary decision of suspending flights to Maldives, then so be it. Then I think every platform out there will have to comply one way or another. So EaseMyTrip has taken that onus upon itself to play that ultra sort of, patriotic nationalistic cause right now by not enabling audiences and flyers to buy tickets and travel packages to Maldives. But if the government of India says that that is the route that should be followed, then I'm sure every other travel platform and airline out there will have to comply.
Absolutely. And before we actually move on, I think it's also important to understand where it all started from, and that is when Prime Minister Modi put out series of videos and pictures on social media platforms endorsing Lakshadweep, which is one of the island states in India, and those were beautiful pictures. And come to think of it, Kartik, I think what stood out for me was that the comments were unprovoked by ministers and some of the sitting ministers in Maldives. This was not a target at Maldives, this was not a target at anybody for that matter. This was a showcase, and pictures on your screens at this point, this was a showcase of what India brings on tables for Indians, vocal for local, travel within the country. That was the message coming in, that was the message that was emanating from those pictures, but it was taken as if it was an offensive to Maldives, which it wasn't.
Look, Shweta, while I'm very patriotic and I'm proud to wear the badge of patriotism on my shoulders, I think it's also equally important to state very clearly right now that we have not yet as a country been able to promote, in 75 years of our independence, being able to promote Lakshadweep as a true full play tourism destination, unlike Goa. Unlike many other coastal cities in the country, we have not yet been able to promote Lakshadweep, and we have been able to build the infrastructure, whether it is by way of the number of airstrips available or travel tourism opportunities, restaurants, hotels, anything that will enable cab services, anything that will enable Indians to visit Lakshadweep. But the point is,
as of this morning, I mean, since you're pointing that out, as of this morning, we tried looking for tickets, tickets to Lakshadweep. We couldn't find any.
I mean, the only airstrip we have is the Agadi airstrip, and that airstrip will, at best be able to accommodate only a handful of flights. But the point is, you don't really have too many flights flying into Agadi. In fact, we were finding it difficult to find a single flight flying into AGX, the Agadi terminal, in Lakshadweep today, and there didn't seem to be any airline flying from either Delhi or Mumbai or Chennai or Kochi, any of the from destinations that we selected incidentally on the MakeMyTrip platform and many other platforms as well. So we haven't yet been able to fully exploit our own tourism potential of Lakshadweep as an island, and that is something that with the Prime Minister's visit, there could be focus, there could be some investments coming into Lakshadweep, and I think that was the idea behind Prime Minister really posting pictures of these so-called, if not virgin islands, then definitely lesser explored islands out there, and giving a signal, giving a nudge to Indians to explore travel within the country, if not necessarily Lakshadweep, then there are many other such travel spots in the country, and also a nudge to the private sector that, hey, you can build this, you can develop this into a full play competitor to the likes of perhaps Maldives and Thailand and so many other countries out there, beach cities available for. for Indians to flock to internationally.
That is correct, absolutely. And the Prime Minister's message apparently did not seem to have gone down very well with its government in Maldives. Maldives government is now perhaps looking to make a formal apology. That is the message coming in. As of this morning, some of the sitting ministers are hinting at a formal apology coming through India's way by the end of today.